three things that you should have turned in to me would have been your plans for your trebuchet, the video of your trebuchet, and a logbook of the things that you did to design, build, and test your trebuchet. Okay, and we mentioned how that logbook should be a record of the things that you did each day so that somebody could read it and reproduce what you did. It should include pictures and diagrams, times and dates, things that you maybe looked up, whatever. So those three things. The three things are your the plans, the actual plans, so some kind of drawing or sketch of something like that, and that can be included in your logbook. But you should also have the logbook and the video of you testing your machine throwing your quarter-pound projectile, 20 feet, right? And what we are going to do now is we're going to build a presentation of your project so that you can present to your classmates really what you did, and if this was a real situation where we were actual engineers in the real world, we would actually probably answer a lot of questions about what we did. Because normally that's a big part of the deal. So what we want to do here is we want to go into PowerPoint. Let's see if we can find PowerPoint here. Really, here's all programs. Let's go to all programs. Let's go to Microsoft Office. Let's go to Microsoft PowerPoint. Okay. So here is Microsoft PowerPoint, and we've already talked a little bit about PowerPoint and how to use it and how not to use it. The things that I really want you to remember about using PowerPoint is that you should have a very organized structure. You should put together some kind of an outline, and you should have an introduction, and you should, in that introduction, discuss the things that maybe your project is all about in general, the overview of the project, maybe the rules of the project, rules of the competition, whatever it is that you're doing, so that everybody knows by the end of your first one or two slides what you're going to be talking about the rest of your presentation. Your first slide, of course, should be a title slide that has your name and anybody else's name who's in the project with you. If it's for a class, which this is, it should include the class's name, the project's name, and all of that. So we're going to use PowerPoint, of course, to develop the presentation. But then, and I forgot to do this, but I think we can do it here. We're also going to use it to record. Here it is, to record our slideshow. So right here we have, if you go to the slideshow point, the slideshow bar, there's all these little file tabs on the toolbar. Go up to the slideshow. You can actually hit a button here that says record slideshow. And when you press this button, it's going to give you the option to start recording, and you can record slide and animation timings and narrations and a laser pointer. Probably you're not going to do any animations. It's usually a waste of time and it's just confusing, so I would just unclick that one. But you definitely want to do narrations and your laser pointer. And so when you start recording, it's going to open up your presentation here, and you're going to have a laser pointer that you're going to be able to use. I think that if you click on it, let's see, maybe not. From current slide. So I think that if you just use your mouse pointer, it will record where your mouse is. But it will also record your voice through this thing, so that if you go, so that you're speaking during your presentation, and you go to the next slide, it will coordinate what you speak about with your slide. So let me get out of this here, and that's kind of how you want to do it. You could also broadcast it, but I think that you're going to have to get onto a broadcast service. I don't think that we have that option. So, but it is an option when you're doing real presentations to actually broadcast your slideshow live over the internet. But what we want to do is use the record slideshow button here and record your presentation. Now, I want to show you some good presentations so that you can kind of see what it's like. And I can send you these as well. I will try to send them to you. I'll send them to you in an email. Sometimes presentations are kind of a pain to send, but I will send them the best I can. Usually they're fairly big. But let's take a look at some good presentations. And, oh, that's empty. We need to go find it somewhere here. Let's see if I've got it here. Well, not quite. There we go. Okay, let's take a look and see what we can find. What I'm going to do is I'm going to show you several different presentations. I'll point out things that are good, I'll point out things that aren't so good, and then you can use them as starting points. So here is an engineering slideshow about computer engineering, where this student is just trying to explain what computer engineering is about. One of the things that I would recommend is to not necessarily have a white background on your slides. First of all, it's a little bit boring. Second of all, it's actually hard. It's not that easy to read black on white, believe it or not. It's actually easier to read a bright, like a white or a yellow on a darker background. One of the easiest ones to read is a yellow that's a fairly bright yellow on a blue background. It's a fairly easy thing to read. But you don't want to use any special effects with your fonts and things like that. The most that you might do is to put a thin white outline on fonts, but don't do any shading effects or anything like this. Try to stay away from that garbage. It confuses the heck out of the eyeballs. But here we got Computer Engineering by Jeff Cox. He probably would want to include, for Engineering 1010 or Engineering Essentials or whatever class that he's doing this for, include that. His next slide is an outline, and that's very good. He has 5 things that he's going to talk about. You don't want to do very much more than that in a presentation. What is computer engineering? How did we get it? So here we've got an overall what is it, a little history of it, and then some stuff about becoming and being a computer engineer. It's a great outline. And then his slides essentially follow that. Here's what is computer engineering, here's the history of it. It's pretty sparse though. Notice that right here is what is computer engineering, and he has one bullet point and then one little thing that computer engineering is all about. It turns out that there's a lot of more things that computer engineering is about, but if you're only going to have one thing, don't put it in a bulleted list. You don't want to make a list with these little bullets if you only have one thing. Make it some kind of statement. Also, it's a good idea to include some visual stuff, right? So if you're looking at computer engineering and trying to present to people about computer engineering, it's a good idea to maybe go to Google and just type in computer engineering. And hit the images bar. And start to look for images that maybe show a really good image that will help people to remember what computer engineering is about. Now you may really like this image right here, but this image does not reflect what that statement said. That statement said how we're going to integrate computers into everyday life. This is just a circuit board. That's not integrating computers into everyday life. This one might be a little bit better, excuse me, but it's not all that great either because it doesn't really show everyday life. It shows somebody that's obviously doing something a little bit non-everyday. He's got 4 screens in front of him. Things that are goofy, kind of like this, are not necessarily the best thing for a technical or an engineering kind of thing. So maybe that's not ideal, but sometimes it has its place. But here's a good one. We have, it looks like a computer built onto some kind of wheel or motor or something like that. That's integrating a computer into real life. So that's a decent one. Let's keep looking for some more ideas here. Here's a good one where we have, it looks like a cell phone that's taken apart into all its components. Great idea, because cell phones are something that everybody uses, and maybe they don't know that computer engineers actually work on cell phones. So that's a great one that will help people to remember kind of some of the things that computer engineers do. Here's another great one, a robotic arm that obviously is run by a computer, but it's also holding some kind of little electronic device. That's obviously an integration between real life and computers. So anyway, that's what you're looking for, is using computers in the real world, right? And you're going to find more and more the more you look, but eventually you got to stop looking and decide that, I've wasted enough time doing this. And so you're going to pick a picture and go. And I would try to have at least one visual image with each slide. But I wouldn't have a lot of them. People think that more is better, not necessarily. So bigger is not better either, and flashier is not necessarily better. You just want the best image that explains best what you're doing. So this would be an ideal slide to have an image on that really helps people to remember what engineers do, but also you may want to include a little more detail here. Here we have the history of engineering. This is again another great place where you could do some great pictures. The history of the computer goes way back, over 100 years. The first computer was actually a mechanical computer. So if we go back to our Google here, and we go here to the first computer, right? Let's see what we bring up with the first computer. Well, here they show these huge rooms with computers. They have the first personal computers. They have the first Apple computer, the ENIAC computer. They have lots of different versions of what they think the first computer is, the first Macintosh. However, you can go even further back. So, for example, if we go back to right here, this particular computer, this is a mechanical computer. And this computer was invented in the 1800s. And what it was designed to do is to add. It was designed to add numbers together, plain and simple. This guy right here, Charles Babbage, was the guy that invented this. And the first guy that built one of these was quite a bit later, up in the 40s or 50s. And here's a great picture of it. It's it's completely mechanical, has no electronic parts, nothing else. And it was invented back in 150 years ago. This would be a great picture to put on that page with the first computer, and then maybe include a date and Charles Babbage. It gives people something to remember that is not just words. And it also kind of shocks them a little bit usually. Most people don't have any clue that the first computer was invented 150 years ago. And then maybe you go to the first computer that's electric, right? First electric computer. And you start going through these. And so maybe you go to Wikipedia and you learn that the first computer was called the ENIAC or something like that. And then you can show a picture of the ENIAC, and you can see that there's these people working on this computer. But it's obviously not a computer like we're used to. There's no keyboard anywhere. There's not even a screen anywhere. But it was certain the first computers were nothing like what we saw today, what we see today. And then you can maybe go on through the history to the first personal computer and start looking at things like this right here is one of the first word processing computers, for example, where it was actually designed to carry around like a suitcase. I would say briefcase, but they were a lot bigger than a briefcase. But you had a handle on this back end side, and this keyboard folded over the top and clipped on here, and you had this tiny little screen, and you had all these floppy disk drives over here, and in fact the oldest ones had little tape drives on them. And all this thing could do really was simple mathematics, and you could write a paper on it. And some of them actually included printers on them as well. They had printers built into them, made them even heavier. There's a matrix dot printer that was super loud and super slow. Then you can get onto some of some of the, first computers out there, IBM's first computers, and the Macintosh's first computers. Here's the first Apple. Most people don't even have no idea that the first Apple was made of wood. And they just, kind of cut out the word Apple in the top here. But this is the first Apple computer that was for sale, you could buy. And kind of funny, actually. But they were making them in their garage. And of course now it's the biggest computer company on the planet. You could also include a more modern version, but you really want to show things that are going to help your audience to remember, help them to connect, and to maybe be a little nostalgic, to maybe give them a little shock, a little lesson, a little learning. And there's so much you can do. But remember that more is not better. Choose 3, 4, 5 things, and don't go beyond that. Beyond 3, 4, or 5 images, you're really getting out of control, and you either want to go to a new slide or just leave off that information. So look up images that are useful. Find images that will help your audience to understand and remember. And don't just have slides with numbers on them. Then it says how to be a computer engineer, right? Again, this one has got some basic information on it, but it's not really all that interesting. Come on, give me the next slide over here. First of all, we have a thing on here that says this combines computer and electrical engineering. Well, that's not how to be a computer engineer. That's what computer engineering is. That should probably be on the previous slide. Make sure the information that you've got on your slide makes sense to the slide. This one, they just say mathematics, physics, computer science, problem-solving skills. Well, again, that's fine if you're going to talk about those things, but maybe you need to rename this slide, because this slide maybe should be what classes you should take to be a computer engineer, or the education for a computer engineer, or the skills for a computer engineer. Not how to be, because this isn't a how to be. It's just the things that you need to know how to do. And then he goes on to computer engineering as a career. Again, design hardware and software. That maybe goes on what a computer engineer does. Portable computing devices, researching, developing, sure. But they don't talk about one of the most important things here. One of the most important things is, what do you get paid? When people are looking for a job, they want to know where they get paid. That's one of the number one things they're interested in. It doesn't talk about what they get paid. It doesn't talk about where you can be a computer engineer. Where, what kind of places hire computer engineers, what companies hire computer engineers. Where are computer engineers living, in big cities and small towns, everywhere. That's important to people, where they're going to work. And again, we have a slide here that just has one little thing on it. Probably you can put more on it. You should have an ending slide that it kind of wraps things up at the end, and then you should, but this one doesn't have one. This one does have a works cited slide. It looks at 2 different things. You should probably look at more than that. If you're doing a presentation, you should probably have resources, and I don't like to use works cited, I just like to use resources. And I like to list my resources here, and if I don't have at least 6, I'm probably not doing enough research for my presentation. And that includes if you're just doing a presentation on a project. Obviously you looked up how to build a trebuchet or a catapult or whatever somewhere online. And you should have all of those resources listed. You should, anything that you used to do your project should be in here. Also, if you're ever doing an engineering project and somebody contributed to your project, for example, you're building a missile and Lockheed Martin provided the guidance package for your missile, you'd better put their name on your presentation, because they're going to be pissed if they gave you a $500,000 grant or a $500,000 piece of equipment and you didn't put their name on it. So keep those things in mind. Now let's look at a different one and see what we can learn. So here is one that uses a different color scheme. It's a white on black, much easier to read, although they're using this shaded background on their letters. Again, I would not recommend it. it kind of washes out a little bit. And then they have their first slide, design engineer description. What is a design engineer, in other words? You really ought to start with a slide that gives an outline. No outline in this slide. Should be one. So you have a slide that has your outline of what you're going to cover, and then this would be the first thing on that outline. But you can see that it's actually a little bit easier on the eyes to read. I hope that you can see that if you actually open up the slideshow here. You can see that reading white on black, it's easier to read for most people instead of black on white. It's just a little more relaxing for the eyes. If that's not the case for you, then maybe you ought to consider doing something else. But you also have to always consider your audience before yourself, right? And most people read white on black better. Here they use different colors for different different things in the list to set apart each side of part of the list. The problem with that is that unless you have a really good screen that you're projecting onto, these colors may come out really funny and they may not show up correct on that black background. So for example, this blue color on the first one, transportation systems, this purple one, they're not necessarily going to come out all that well. And on different computers sometimes with different projectors, you get these colors don't end up even looking the same color. And so you have to be careful using colors for fonts in particular. Colors for fonts, I generally like to stick with one color if I can. And then you can set these off using bullet points or numbers or whatever else. I do like that design engineers tend to deal with much more complex technology than the scientific systems, such as, I like the fact that he's got this little sentence to set off this little list, but you should use proper grammar as well, such as should probably have a colon here, and then you list these things off or something like that. And then here he takes a little bit of a departure. He talks about the design process. And the design process is important in all of engineering, not just for design engineers. So maybe this belongs in here, maybe it doesn't. I'm not really sure. But anyway, it's got a nice image that shows how this design process is this kind of cycle, and that's nice. It's even animated, I guess, which I guess is cool. Here he goes to engineering, the education requirements, and he has, this certificate here, this Bachelor of Engineering certificate, or his diploma, whatever you want to call it. I think that's great. However, it takes up a lot of space. If you're going to do something like this, I might make the picture a little bit smaller because everybody knows what a diploma looks like, and you don't need to have it, blown up so big that you can read it. And then maybe include some more stuff over here. It says required to obtain a bachelor's degree from an accredited university or college. Maybe you list the top 5 colleges for design engineering. Or maybe you list the 5 closest colleges that have that engineering degree. Gives a little bit more detail so that they have something that they can use. You have to get this degree at this college. It's not necessarily the best information, because now they have to go and find out where they can do this from their own. And then they say pass a written licensing exam. Well, who makes that exam? What is the exam called? You might want some information about that. And this little extra piece of information is also nice. And then, of course, you want to have a closing slide, something that sums everything up. And also, in this one, you probably don't want to just know what it takes to become an engineer. You want to know what it's like to be an engineer, right? You want to have it complete, all the information in there. This particular talk or presentation has 7 slides to it, including the title slide and the references slide. That's a really short presentation. That's probably less than 5 minutes of presentation right there. Generally, you want to figure that you can have more than a minute per slide of presentation. So if you're supposed to give a 10-minute presentation, you should have at least 10 slides in addition to your first slide and your last slide, which don't take any time, really. So you want to have at least 10 slides, probably for a 10-minute presentation. depending on how long you talk per slide. Some people talk longer per slide, some people less. But it's much better to have more slides than you need than less slides, because you can always hurry up through things or skip things, but making up things, not so easy. Let's take a look at another one and see what we can learn here. So here's another one that's a little bit incomplete. Mechanical engineer by, who's it by? It's a white background, obviously not all that exciting. But they do have an outline slide. Mechanical engineering variable practice, it's a broad category, worldwide practice, wages and workforce. We're going to learn about 4 different things here, obviously. And here they talk about essentially the history. What is it like? What was it like in days past? They talk about Archimedes, 287 BC, all the way up to Suzong in 1020 AD, right? And you could even go further. You could go up, there's so many examples of engineering in history. You don't need to stop at 1020 AD, you could stop at 2014, right? So that's what I would do, honestly, is I would complete this list and bring it all the way up to the present for a history of mechanical engineering. And it's a broad category, is maybe obvious to people, maybe not. So you give some examples. A toothbrush is something that could easily be designed by a mechanical engineer, furniture, and an internal combustion engine. You could also throw up here a cruise missile. You could throw up here all kinds of things that mechanical engineers work on. They do lots and lots of different things. Stealth fighter, whatever you want. And then we have some slides that are not quite finished. Obviously, they want to talk about worldwide community of mechanical engineering. They want to talk about what you're getting as you work in engineering. They want to talk about how many people are in the engineering workforce, and kind of some information about that. They've got lots of different things they talk about, but then they don't end that's their last slide. So this is obviously an incomplete presentation. But we want to finish this thing. We want to finish it up. This is a good place to start. After you've written your outline, this is what your presentation should look about an hour after you've started working on your PowerPoint presentation. It should have some basic stuff fleshed out, some things entered in, maybe unfinished things, some pictures just kind of thrown in here not very cleanly, and you're going to fix it later, you're going to clean it up later. Creating a good presentation is going to take you at least 10 to 20 hours, 10 to 15, maybe 20 hours. And that will be a presentation that lasts 10 to 15 minutes, okay? It's going to take a long time, and so you need to put some time, some work into it. Now, I'm not going to ask you to give a 10 to 15 minute presentation. I'm going to ask you to give a 5-minute presentation, so you should consider 5 hours a good working time for that presentation. Let's look at one more. Plastics engineering, right? This is a nice slide. It's got a little bit of nice graphics on it to make it not so boring, a little bit of shading in the corners and this little bar over here. It's not my particular favorite because, again, I don't like white backgrounds, but it's just what you want to do. But notice that he's got Mid-Plains Community College down here. He's got the title. He's got his name here. That's a good title slide because it has relevant information. It's very professional. We're not starting off with, however, an outline. We should probably have an outline that says, what are the things that we're going to talk about in this presentation? And here he says, what does the plastic engineers do? But up here he talked about plastics engineering, so he needs to get his grammar correct. What does a plastics engineer do, right? So we've got process, design, developing, manufacturing. Probably having just 4 words here is okay if you include maybe some images that would help them to remember, help them to understand what these things mean, right? Or maybe a little explanation next to each one. Here, in the next slide, talks about creating plastics, how they're low cost, they're durable, and certain specifications. Maybe, again, some more detail or some more pictures to explain. You either need to have a picture to explain something, or you need to have words to explain something, or a little bit of both. A couple of cups doesn't really explain anything here. Plastics engineering specialities. We've got 5 of them right here, but we have one picture, and we're not even sure what this picture is, right? So maybe this one probably is an automotive plastics, it looks like, but maybe you have a picture that shows what each of these things is. So what I'm saying here is that this is a very professionally done presentation, but he's just kind of thrown pictures in, one per page, so he has a picture. But that doesn't necessarily help you to remember things because the pictures do not enhance the text. Okay? So plastics engineering education, again, we just have some plastic down here. This is an education slide, not a plastic slide. We need to have some, if we're going to have imagery, we need to have imagery that makes sense for this stuff. But I don't even think you would need imagery for this. You need to have a major that's strong in math and science. You need to do some stuff in product design, research development, communication skills, tool design, mold design. And maybe you list some of the majors that are common for plastics engineering education. For example, materials science, process engineering, mechanical engineering, materials engineering. I mean, taking those kinds of majors are the perfect kind of thing to get into plastics engineering. Basic job info. Okay, I probably wouldn't write it like that because that sounds like you're describing somebody's job. Really what you want to do is you want to describe the industry, right? So maybe this is the plastics engineering industry or careers in plastics engineering or something like this. And then you can include this information. Okay, so you maybe also want to list what are the top 5 companies in plastics engineering. You know, you can list things like companies like 3M and other companies that do lots of plastics engineering. And then you need a slide at the end. So this one does not have a conclusion slide. It does not have your slide citing your resources, which definitely they used some resources. So that is the idea behind giving a presentation that is effective. I've given you lots of information of what to do, what not to do, and you need to go out there and build a presentation. That's your job. Starting today, you've got a few minutes left in class today, you can start to put together an outline, and your presentation should be about what you did for this project for the trebuchet. You should include pictures of what you did, drawings of what you did, designs that you got from the internet, whatever. If you did any calculations, if you did whatever you did. If you changed your design, if you had an original design that didn't work and then you changed it to make it work better, you should include that in your presentation. You should include your original design, what went wrong with it, why you changed it, how you changed it, and what the result was. And you should also tell me the results. Your slide should have results. And you should figure out a way to organize that information into an outline that makes sense and put together a 5-minute presentation. It should be at least 5 slides, maybe 6 or 7. But it should be a 5-minute presentation, and then you should give the presentation using the record button in PowerPoint, which again is found under the slideshow button, and it's the record slideshow button here. You should record that, and then you should send it to me after you've recorded it. And I think that after you've recorded it, you can share it. So here's my recorded version. If I right-click on it, I can, no, that's not my recording. I think that you can share it somehow, and let's see if we can figure out how to share that really quick. You record slideshow. If we right-click on it, if I go to Publish Slides, what does that do? I'll save it as Presentation 1. And if I publish it to, well, maybe it's not going to be it. Well, just go ahead and record it, and we'll figure out how to publish it later. You might have to just play it for me in class one day. But anyway, that's where we're going with that. You have the weekend to work on that, and then Monday I would like to see your progress on that, and I'll help you out with anything that you need on Monday to get going, to get finished on that. And then on Wednesday we will collect your presentations, your recordings of your presentations, and we will move on to the next project. Does anybody have any questions? What we're doing? Get your presentation started. Start them right now if you can, so that you can have something to work on and some questions to ask on Monday. Make sure that you do the best job you can and ask some questions on Monday so I can help you improve it. I'm done for today, so we'll see you next Monday. Have a good weekend.